Hi, I'm Simon. I hail from OpenCredo. I like complex problems and cats. I also speak very quickly sometimes, so just raise your hand if I'm going too fast. Or you can't hear me. Thank you. Thank you for having me. So I'm with OpenCredo, and we create conditions for your staff to thrive and succeed. And some of the tools that I'll be showing you here are ones that we use at OpenCredo as well. So I hope they are of as interest to you as they are to me. So hopefully you're all in the right room. What I'd love to talk about is technology is necessary but not sufficient to bring bottom line improvement. There's a few things I want to talk about. The first one is the goal of a business. Without a goal, there is no improvement. I want to talk about NCOM, which is a failing repair business. I want to talk about obstacles, the role of technology, and I want to draw on the thinking of all these people, including my dad. And I think the only thing that I want to do, hopefully, is not is to translate their thinking in a way that actually makes sense and is useful and doesn't actually plagiarize their thoughts or mistranslate them. So let's just jump straight in. Stop me anytime. I have questions all the way through. A lot of those questions are really more for me to make sure I'm conveying the messages in a way that makes sense. So I'm really just testing myself. But if you have any answers, please jump in. So the goal of the business to me is to increase profits now and in the future. And when I first looked at this, I thought this sounded very capitalistic and very cold, and I didn't really like that. But the words that actually then stood out was the fact that it's now and in the future. And you can't generate profits in the future if you don't think about your market, your customers, your shareholder, the environment. If there isn't an environment tomorrow, you can't create profits tomorrow. But more importantly to me is that if you don't have employees, you can't create a profit tomorrow. You have to look after your employees. And so increasing profits now in the future is the goal, but there's some very important necessary conditions. You need to look after your staff and your market, your environment, your shareholders, your customers to be able to do that. If you agree with that, then that gives us a bit of a North Star to talk about. In my mind, there's two ways to increase profits in the business. The first way is reducing costs. Prioritize reducing costs. And what I mean by that is make sure that of all the money coming into your business, less flows back out. You keep in your pocket as profit. The second way is prioritize increasing revenue. And that's just make sure that more money comes into your business to begin with. Pretty simple. There's two interesting points for me about reducing costs. The first one is you lose your ability to focus. Everything in your business is a cost. Your staff, travel, coming to SREday to a degree on paper is a cost. Your real estate, your electronics, your software, your cloud cost, all of this is a cost. Costs come from everywhere. And if your priority is reducing costs, where do you begin? Where do you end? Everything is a cost. The second thing is you can only reduce costs down to zero. There's a flaw there. There's a limit. And if you go all the way down to zero, you don't have a business left, which is not a good thing, right? Whereas if you prioritize increasing revenue, there's two interesting things there. Firstly, you have a very clear focus, and that's what the rest of this presentation is about when it comes to improvement. The second thing is, theoretically, you can increase your revenue limitlessly, right? It's not that easy, don't get me wrong. If I knew the answer, I wouldn't, I'd probably be doing that. But theoretically, it's limitless. So, recap. Prioritizing cost reduction inhibits focus because everything's a cost. And it limits improvement because you can only go down to zero. Prioritizing revenue growth provides clear focus, which I'll be talking about, and unlimits improvement. It's not to say it's easy, but it's a good starting point. So let's talk about NCOM. And you can probably tell where I got the name from. In my case, NCOM is a washing machine repair business. Very, very sexy. And there's a few stages that I just want to walk through so we can talk about the business, understand it, and then we can start to use some of these thinking tools on the business. So a washing machine repair business starts with a customer having a broken down washing machine, unable to wash their underwear. And the next thing they'll do is they'll call NCOM. They'll call the contact center to try and book a repair. The depot will dispatch an engineer with hopefully the right spare parts, hopefully a van and the tools, right? Engineer will hopefully fix the machine. Finance at some point will collect payment through whatever means, and we get money. It's like 4 steps to revenue. It's like the name for the next book. But it also looks like a Monopoly board, so let's just do it that way. And what we want to do, this is the only animation I have, actually I think it's the first of 2 animations I have, is we want to get from left to right with as many customers as we can, from broken washing machines, dirty clothes, to clean clothes and paid revenue coming into the business. So my question is, and I'm going to try and answer this, is how do you actually increase revenue if that's the case? Okay, I'm going to try because this is a bit of an unclear question. I'm really, really simple, right? Revenue comes in through collecting payments. So my guess is, if I want to increase the amount of money I get in any period, I just collect payments more quickly, more revenue, right? But the problem with that is you can't collect payments until you fix the washing machine. So if I want to collect payments more quickly, I need to fix washing machines more quickly. Okay. But I can't fix washing machines unless there's an engineer there. So I can't increase the rate I fix washing machines unless I increase the rate that I send staff out. But I can't send staff out until the repair's been booked. Otherwise, it's a bit like Minority Report. And that would be really weird. So I need to increase the rate at which I book repairs. So all I've really come to is saying that we need to speed up. If we speed up the rate of every step in our business, we can increase the rate of revenue. But that doesn't, I don't know, that doesn't really feel like it helps. But I think if I change that wonderful Monopoly board into something a bit simpler, I can start to see one of my assumptions that's incorrect. What I've assumed here is that every step in the process runs at the same rate. Every part of your business has the same clock speed. And that's not necessarily the case. Even in the software development process, if we look at it, work tends to get stuck between teams for a while. It piles up. And part of the reason is because the different teams in our software delivery process run at different speeds. It's just normal. They're doing different things. And we can kind of visualize that like a pipe, where in our business, different steps run at different rates. And in NCOM's case, the fixing the washing machine, getting the repairman out or repair lady out to fix the washing machine and do their job successfully is the slowest step in the process. It's the bottleneck. And every pipe by definition has a bottleneck. It has a slowest moving part. And we can find that because there's work piling up even more than elsewhere. There's appointments that are yet to be tended to. And just there's one really interesting thing about a bottleneck. And it took me a while to really internalize this. I think you'll get there much more quickly than me. But in a business, the thing about a bottleneck is the rate at which a business can generate revenue is equal to the rate of the bottleneck. And what I mean by that is if the slowest step in our business is fixing washing machines, and for some reason we go and do it one machine per day, it's pretty slow. And all the other steps are faster, the rate at which we can generate revenue is equivalent to one machine a day. Because even if we collect payments at 10 machines a day, we're only going to fix one a day. We can't collect payment on everything else. So now I've told you a little bit more. Can we answer this question? How do you increase revenue at NCOM? I think you're probably around there, but you're a little bit shyer than me even. We need to increase the rate of the bottleneck, because if we can fix more machines per day, we can collect more payments a day. All the other steps are already operating fast enough. So rather than trying to speed up everything, we just need to speed up the bottleneck. I hope that made sense. Right. So mind experiment, thought experiment. What happens if we instead focus improvement anywhere else? Waste. Yeah, I'd accept waste. I'd accept nothing. I'd accept work piles up more quickly. Yeah, that's all we're doing. We've got excess capacity and all we're doing is helping work pile up more quickly in front of the bottleneck. Absolutely. Thank you. So yeah, recap. Rate a business can generate money is equal to the rate of the slowest moving part, the bottleneck. If our priority is improving revenue, we now have a clear focus. This is what I said at the very beginning. If we focus on cutting costs and everything's a cost, where do we begin? Whereas if we focus on improving revenue, we have a clear focus. We just need to focus on the bottleneck. We get more customers through the process. We can get more money in the business. We have more happy customers. And improvement anywhere else is waste. Thank you. Your word exactly. Spot on. So now I want to talk about improving bottlenecks. Okay. If I'm talking too fast again, just stop me. If you can't hear me, stop me. If something's going wrong, just tell me. Right. So we've already agreed. We need to get all of our customers from left to right as quickly as possible. We've agreed with that because we want revenue. But it's not that simple, as we all know, right? There's obstacles. There's things that get in the way of our teams that slow them down, that create bottlenecks. And there's two things I want to say about that. Firstly, obstacles rarely exist in isolation. I don't know about you, but when I'm in a team, often the problems I face in my team aren't caused by something in my team, because then I'd remove those obstacles. They often come from deeper in the organization, somewhere else, a decision that's been made that I don't have any influence over. No one's fault. They're doing the best they could. They just didn't see the impact. And the second thing is that often the problem I have in my team is probably the same or similar to a problem you have in your team. And they're probably both coming from the same place. And the great thing about that is if we can find where our problems are coming from and we focus our efforts there and fix the problem, all of the obstacles for all of our teams go away, or at least a large number. We get leverage, we get focus. So the question is, well, actually, let me recap first. An obstacle in one part of the organization is often caused by something elsewhere. Otherwise, we'd remove it. Many obstacles tend to come from just a few underlying causes, and finding and attacking the few underlying causes can help many teams in one go. All right, let me talk about MCOM again. So MCOM, so whilst we've been having this chat for the last 10 minutes, MCOM have gone away and they said, yeah, actually that is the bottleneck. Fixing washing machines really is the bottleneck. And as we look at that, we found a few interesting things. Firstly, our engineers, when they go out to the customers to fix the washing machines, they can't actually fix it often on the first visit. And that's really frustrating. They also are quitting, which isn't good. And as a result of that, and for other reasons, there's a growing backlog of appointments because there's less people to do the same amount of work. So what we're thinking of doing, and they want us to think about this together, is they're thinking about improving the training and hiring process because they feel that will help engineers feel a bit more connected with the organization, have the training they need, the skills they need to fix machines on the first visit. If that makes sense, the question I have for you, is that a good solution? No. Oh. Anything you care to add?
I mean, the engineers is quite busy already, and you also put them for additional training.
Oh, I like this. I like this. I like this. Any other views? The gentleman here is saying that they're probably quite busy, Ignat, and they probably differently. Ooh, interesting. Oh, this man here. I like it. Anything else?
You've got two problems on there. First two problems. The first one is a consequence.
Yeah.
Retention and whether it's first line support to more identify the issue.
Yeah.
And get the key bits there for the engineer to actually do a better job.
I love it. You're already thinking in terms of cause and effect. Love it. Yes, absolutely. Okay. Oh, you're always going to spoil the surprise. Oh, okay, I love this. Yes, exactly, right? So it feels like I don't know about you, but it feels like this is the second of two animations. The last one I promised that I'll subject you to. But it feels like there's something deeper there for us to understand. I think you're already peering below the waterline in all your answers. And as Akoff says, he says, the more of the context of a problem that a scientist can comprehend, the greater are his chances of finding a truly adequate solution. And so it feels like there's something we need to scratch and understand a little bit more. And the question is, how do we understand the context of the problem, the organization? And thankfully, Steve Tendon steps and he says, we've made these organizations, how can they be truly complex? How can we not understand them? If it seems complex, it's just because we haven't joined the dots. And cause and effect thinking can help us start to join the dots, see the inherent simplicity behind the complexity. So we can start to work out, is this the right solution for the situation? Again, stop me if I don't make sense. I don't tend to. My wife stops me all the time. Right, so I'm going to give you a quick bumper lesson, a quick lesson in cause and effect, just how I'm going to draw it. You probably know this better than me. I think some of you already do. But the way that I want to think about NCOM is in terms of cause and effect. And the way that I map that out is an arrow means if then. So if a lamp is not plugged in, the lamp will not turn on. If then. Also, I use a circle as an and clause. If it is raining and I'm outside, if it is raining and if I'm outside, then I will get wet, probably. This comes from the current reality trees, from the theory of constraints, Eli Goldratt. This is not my thinking. This is all theirs, all his. So these are the obstacles that we saw, that we talked about, that NCOM uncovered whilst we were having our chat, right? Engineers cannot fix issues on first visit. Engineers quitting, growing backlog of appointments. There's already some kind of consequences, some hidden cause and effects there if we start to map it, right? There's also a few other symptoms, obstacles that I didn't give you, that I just want to put on the page that were probably quite inherently obvious, which is customers going elsewhere, margins are decreasing, and the contact center has a long call queue, the people who are booking appointments for the engineers. But so there's a few cause and effect things here we can already start to map out. So if engineers cannot fix issues on the first visit, and engineers want to do good work, I think every member of staff wants to do good work, they might get frustrated and they might quit. And the problem is, if they quit, there's probably going to be a growing backlog of appointments, as you pointed out, because there's less people to do the same amount of work. If that is the case, appointments have a long lead time. Any one customer is going to have to wait days or weeks perhaps for their appointment. And the problem is, this is to do with clothes. Some people care more about their clothes than I do and wanting to smell nice, and that's understandable. And so if lead time is important to customers and appointments have a long lead time, those two things together mean that customers will probably go to elsewhere. And if customers go elsewhere, that's probably why margins are decreasing. They're going to our competitors, right? But engineers not being able to fix the issue on the first visit has consequences beyond engineers. customers also need to book another appointment, a second appointment or a third appointment to fix the same one issue with their washing machine. And that means that margins are decreasing because now engineers have to make multiple trips to the same place to fix something they could otherwise do in one trip. There's going to be a growing backlog of appointments because there's multiple trips to fix any one issue. And the contact center, who now has to receive second and third booking calls from customers, has more work to do. Also, if margins are decreasing, as a manager, what I would do is I'd focus on efficiency. I'd say, okay, well, let's just try and do more work in any given period. But that leads to a few things. Firstly, it means that we're going to incentivize, we're going to measure our staff, our contact agents, on how many calls they take per day. And they're probably going to want to do as much work as they can per day anyway because there's so many calls coming in, second and third round bookings. And that means contact agents need to minimize call length. They need to pick up the phone and put it down as quickly as possible. The problem with that is understanding problems takes time. And if they don't have time to understand the problem the customer has with their washing machine, to make the model exactly what is going wrong there, then they may misunderstand the problems. And that seems okay, right? But the problem is, and you got this quite right, the gentleman over here on the left, whose name I wish I knew, is that if vans are loaded based on problem, because then vans won't hold the necessary parts. And the reason for that is there's loads of different washing machines, loads of different spare parts. If vans were infinitely big, we could just put everything on them. If we had infinite number of spare parts, we could just load the vans with everything we needed, but we can't. And so we need to load them based on the problem that we're facing. And if we don't understand the problem, we won't load the vans right. If we don't load the vans right, we can't fix the issue on the first visit. That's frustrating. And if engineers, and also if we're measuring staff based on efficiency, how much did you get done today? How many customers did you visit? Engineers must maximize their customer visits. And they probably feel the pressure anyway because there's a growing backlog of appointments. And so appointments are going to be tightly packed. But that leaves them little room for maneuver if the problem isn't quite what they expect. It means there's insufficient time scheduled to fix problems often. And again, engineers cannot fix issues on the first visit. And seen, that is the whole thing. So in summary, if I was to try and summarize that to you, what I'd say is that do I have a laser? I don't have a laser. If we're focusing on efficiency, if we're trying to maximize the work done in any given period, it's encouraging people to make mistakes. It's encouraging us not to understand the problem faced by customers. It's encouraging engineers to make as many trips to customers as possible, and they're succeeding. But as they do that, we're encouraging them to make mistakes, to overbook themselves, and to misunderstand problems. And that's breeding rework. Every engineer is having to go through to each customer several times. The contact center has to take several calls from irate customers to book follow-on appointments. I don't know about you, but that's not great. So where is the common underlying cause? So as I said earlier, if I'm in one team and you're in another team, we probably have different obstacles that are coming from the same place. In this case, where is it? Where is it? It's kind of down here in my mind, because I feel that by focusing on efficiency, by measuring staff based on how much activity they do in a given period, we're actually encouraging mistakes and breeding rework. It's leading to engineers overbooking themselves and contact agents not understanding the problem because they don't have the time. It's no fault. It's not their fault. What would be the impact of the original solution of improving training and hiring? I think you're already on this anyway. Yeah. Training is not the problem. Skills is not the problem. Training is assuming that they don't have the skills. Hiring is assuming that we're hiring the wrong people. I don't think that's the case. Nothing here makes me think that's the case. So, problems are often interconnected and best understood and tackled together. Like a paradox of the elephant, right? If we only understand a little bit of the problem, we don't put it all together, we won't tackle it for what it is. And as Akoff also says, I have too many of his quotes, but they're so good, is that we fail more often because we solve the wrong problem than because we get the wrong solution to the right problem. So cause and effect thinking, like we just used, can help us find and focus on the underlying cause of problems to eliminate all the obstacles in one go, or at least many of them. We can understand why focusing anywhere that is an underlying cause leads only to temporary improvement. And in this case, misunderstanding a customer's problem at the very beginning of the process, or almost tripped there, will lead to rework and bottleneck for the engineers. So the bottleneck for the engineers is only because we're partly misunderstanding the problem up front. That was a lot. Ooh, okay. Any questions so far? Just to give you a bit of a breather for a second. Or is it all okay? Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm trying to project this talk on the incident management process.
Yeah.
Many
Ooh.
people try to what they get out of
Thank you.
Thank you. If you project this to an incident management process, what like the traditional way of like retrospective, not the retrospective, I guess, the incident report says like what was the underlying root cause. But this makes me question, like, is it even the right approach? Can an incident based on this have a single underlying root cause?
Oh, that's interesting. So my gut feel is, and I don't know too much about root cause analysis, as much as I would like to, but my gut feel is what we're looking at here is kind of patterns. We're looking at conditions in an organization that will tend to lead to certain outcomes. So for example, if we look at over a certain period of time, many incidents tend to be like this and come from this area. That makes it, the question then needs to be, well, how have we designed our system and our organization to let that happen? And that's what this diagram's trying to understand. If we have a lot of similar types of incident, then there's something wrong with the design of our organization, the way that it works, the way that work flows through it. And that's what we need to find and correct to design out the opportunity for those problems. Did that?
Yeah, pretty much. Thank you.
Is
Thank
that
you.
the difference between proactive and reactive? For example, we have a lot of people we have a lot of incidents,
Yeah.
therefore we hire more SREs. I'm not going to win because I get more toys to play.
Yeah.
But it's not going for the underlying cause, and you end up in that reactive state where you're just constantly firefighting.
So well put, yes. So well put, yes. So I think Akov, as I understand it, talks about solving problems versus dissolving the cause, kind of. And so he says you can solve problems all you want, but generally what would happen is it will shift the problem around or be temporary, as you're pointing out. Whereas if you dissolve the problem, if you find out where these things are coming from, the underlying cause, you can stop them happening altogether. And so you put it very well. It's proactive versus reactive. Love it. Yeah, very, very astute. Thank you. Anything else, or shall I continue? Yeah.
Oh, it's just a comment around how organizations work in terms of RCAs or trying to solve problems.
Yeah.
I suppose the underlying problem in this problem solving is that a lot of organizations work in silos. So the dependence is actually quite hard to find, irrespective of how many. What I mean, if I've done a lot of RCAs, and no matter how much we try to dissolve it, it never works because there's always a piece of information missing.
Yeah. Oh, that really resonates. Yeah, I think there's a few things that come up for me. I think, firstly, spot on. I think, we're always going to divide organizations up somehow. And I think that, but I feel that as a manager, I've too often forgotten that even however we divide an organization, we still need to coordinate across an organization. An organization is there to allow any one person to do more than they could otherwise do as an individual. So we're going to need to talk. But we kind of forget that, and sometimes, and that's why I find this helpful, is it allows us to start to understand the reality across the organization a little bit better. So yeah, spot on. I just agree with what you said, basically. Thank you. Oh, okay. Let me continue. I completely lost track of time. I'm okay. Okay, thank you. I've got your blessing. Perfect. Right. So, what would be in better recap? Blah 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 blah. Blob. So interlude, and this is going to be really difficult because you don't have a piece of paper in front of you, but I would otherwise have a thinking game for you, and I'll still let you try and do it in your head. But my challenge to you, you may have seen this before, is can you join all 9 dots with only 4 straight lines and without removing your imaginary pen from your imaginary paper? I got to give you a bit of a second to think about it. I couldn't even do this with it, like on the right-hand side. This is me failing repeatedly. There was always 1 dot left over. So if you can do this in your head, I'll be most impressed. But I'll just give you a second to think about it.
And the line cross.
Yeah. I'm grateful for the question. Keep. Yeah, absolutely. The only rules in that sentence, absolutely. It is difficult to do. I found it difficult to do with paper. So yeah, absolutely, really hard to do in your head. Yeah. Let me. So there's 2 answers that came up for me, and this is from Akov's The Art of Problem Solving, a really good book. So the first one is if you realize you can go beyond the end, the end of the box, and you do much longer lines than you might otherwise expect, you can actually cover more dots with the 4 lines. And the other one is if you actually fold the paper, which you can't do. And if you did that in your head, I'll be really impressed. But if you fold the paper, then you can cover 6 dots with 1 line, and then you can mop up the rest really easily. And Acuff says here that creativity is shackled by self-imposed constraints. And what you really need to do to find these solutions is you actually need to break assumptions that you probably held without realizing, and I certainly held. I held the assumption that lines must be drawn within the perimeter of the square, which stopped me from finding that top right solution. And I also held the assumption that paper must lie flat whilst lines are drawn, and therefore I couldn't find the bottom right solution. And so for me, creative solutions often come from surfacing and reevaluating our assumptions. And if we come back to income, what is that? That's an assumption. I didn't really give you a chance to answer that because my question isn't very clear, but this thing here is an assumption. There's an assumption that by focusing on efficiency, by getting all staff to do more work in any given period, will increase margins. But the question is that valid? Is that a valid assumption? Yeah, no, it's really unclear. Am I talking to myself? Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, so yeah. It is an assumption. It's an assumption, yeah. Is it a valid assumption? It depends. Have we seen it valid in this case? No.
It's very ambiguous, if you ask me.
Yes.
It doesn't increase the efficiency, or focus on efficiency doesn't really mean that we solve all the problems. I'm quite sure.
Oh, yes. My wording there isn't very clear. That also is a contributor, as well as me being very ambiguous who I'm asking the question to, myself or you. So that's a very good point as well. So the question here is, are we, by measuring staff on how much work they do in a given period, by encouraging contact center staff to answer as many calls as possible, by encouraging engineers to visit as many customers as possible, is that actually improving our margins? Oh, yeah, absolutely, spot on. And so empirically, we've seen it's not true. We played it out. We've seen what happens, right? We just generate loads of rework. And in generating loads of rework, who suffers? The customers. Our engineers get fed up and leave because they just want to do a good job, and our margins decrease. So absolutely, yeah, spot on. And John Seddon, he kind of also talks about it from a theoretical perspective. By chasing efficiency, by managing costs, we actually undermine effectiveness and drive up costs. And effectiveness here is in terms of the customers, solving problems on their terms. And he also ventures to suggest that in break and fix companies, companies that are trying to fix things on behalf of customers, like washing machines, there's 2 measures that can help us in terms of effectiveness. One is customers care about timeliness, especially when it's to do with their clothes. And secondly, they care about right first time. They don't want to be visited 10 times to fix a washing machine. They just want it done right, first time. And so we could, if we change this assumption that's leading leadership to measure staff in that strange way, to focus on timeliness and right first time to improve margins. So they measured staff on their effectiveness in solving customer problems. I'm curious what would happen. And this is a question, but I'll play out for you in a second. I need to be less ambiguous in my question. So often the underlying cause of obstacles is an assumption that no longer stands or wasn't correct to begin with, but it took us a while to see that. No one's fault. Correcting the assumption can help dissolve the problem and its effects. Upstream, proactive. So next question, where can technology help in this story?
Anywhere.
Ooh, give me an example.
Well, we can design some kind of technical system to help contact agents to better understand the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm assuming a lot of customers may be calling with the same problem, and we categorize and make contact agent actually be more efficient, but not trying to understand the ticking boxes.
Yeah.
The computer will tell them the solution.
I like that. Yeah. So I think, Ignat, you're saying something around here. You've given me a slightly different answer about helping the contact center, which I like. I came up with maybe let's have a self-serve website, as long as it understands the problems. Otherwise, we're just going to perpetuate the issue, right? So absolutely. The thing with this for me is that will create some relief for the contact center agents. They'll have a bit more space to answer more calls, perhaps. But the problem is if they're still driven by the fact that they need to answer as many calls as possible, because leadership management is focused on efficiency, do as much as you can as quickly as you can, they're going to just pick up calls and try to put the phone down as quickly as possible. So we'll still misunderstand problems. So it provides some temporary relief, but the problems will still exist in my mind, if that makes sense. Whereas, if we couple that with changing the underlying assumptions. We're no longer telling our staff, hey, pick up the phone and put it down as quickly as possible. Just make sure we help customers on their terms, timeliness, right first time, understand the problem, help your engineers. Don't try and maximize your customer visits in any given day. Just try and solve the problem right first time and tell us what we can do to support you. That actually starts to erode everything. Like, no longer are we going to maximize customer visits, no longer are we going to maximize calls taken, no longer are we going to minimize call length, no longer are we going to misunderstand problems to the same degree. Vans are more likely to have the right spare parts. We're going to more likely have the right amount of time to fix a problem. Customers won't need to book another appointment, therefore there's less rework. And don't get me wrong, it's not just a magic wand, we just break an assumption, it's all done. But we have a new assumption which to redesign the whole system. And we can start to kind of unpick how the wrong assumption was hurting us as an organization. Right, so self-service technology, yes, please.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Got a very silly idea here.
Yeah, please.
So please don't kill me for that.
No.
So the engineer goes there. Obviously, it doesn't have a spare part, whatever. So it's going to take another 3 days.
Yeah.
Right. You are in a washing machine repairing system. In parallel, you offer a laundry service as well. We can fix it in 3 days, but we'll take your dirty clothes, get it done within a day.
Yeah.
By the time you're waiting, your laundry is getting clean.
Yeah.
Job done. Because in the end, you care about your laundry. You do care about your washing machine, but you need to wear your clothes. So sideline, you just offer them a laundry service for a fraction of the cost on the same day. We couldn't fix it. We could take your laundry, get it done by the evening, return it to you. 2 days time, your washing machine is going to be fixed.
And there you go, sir. You've broken another assumption that we have to be just in the washing machine repair business. So absolutely, I still feel that there's a problem to be solved because this business is losing money. And if we then step into kind of another line of work to support that.
Increase cost,
Yeah, it may not help us.
Make
but,
your customer happy.
oh, I see, yes, so yes, absolutely. So I think, solving problems on customer terms will help us uncover that solution, and whilst at the same time also hopefully fixing the main business itself. And those two things are very complementary. Yes, so maybe instead of introducing self-service website, what you're saying is a shorter-term fix. Yeah, I love. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I love that. Thank you for helping me understand. Absolutely, and I think that's better than introducing self-service website. So perfect.
That's my next startup.
Perfect. I'll see you there. Perfect. So these are some other invalidated assumptions that we found as we've looked at organizations. And at face value, I don't know about you, but these all felt like they felt coherent. They felt like things that we're conditioned to believe as managers, as staff, but they're not actually quite right. I'll skip past that, but key points. So technology can bring bottom line benefits, can increase our revenue if and only if it diminishes a bottleneck to throughput and therefore revenue. In this case, it was the engineers fixing things right first time. They were the constraint. They were the limit to revenue, through no fault of their own, as we saw. Secondly, the assumptions perpetuating the bottleneck are reevaluated. Do as much as you can every day. I don't know if that's how managers speak, but that's how they do in my mind. Movements like DevOps and SRE bring both new technical paradigms as well as assumptions. And that's the thing I like about it. They're sociotechnical. And so they actually help us challenge our assumptions. They don't just give us technology. They challenge our assumptions about availability, for example, when we're releasing new code. And let's not get better at delivering technology, but better at solving problem and using technology where appropriate. Cause and effect thinking can help us understand the problem to be solved so we can find the right solutions. And technology can very much be part of that. So now what? So here's some books. This is where all that thinking comes from. Please have a look. These are the three things that we do at Open Credo. So we assess and advise. We do this kind of work for organizations. We help agile coaches work across their teams to help remove obstacles that exist elsewhere in the organization, and we engineer solutions. But I'd love to talk if you just want to talk theory. That'll be fun. Whatever you fancy. Thank you very much, and thanks for participating.
Any questions that haven't been asked already? Okay, there we go.
Sorry, thank you for your talk. I really liked it.
Thank you.
One thing I've been toying in my mind, and this is not that a question, but rather for your opinion, is based on all this, and like I've been thinking about it myself, but this kind of confirms my ideas that it's really not the best idea these days to hire experienced people when you talked about constraints. So, and based on my examples, when I see some kind of a thing, a not very efficient thing in my organization, which is definitely not my team, because otherwise I would fix it. I go to the other parts of even like non-technical parts of the organization, say, oh, why are we doing like this? And like, it doesn't really work well, I think, and like it can be done better. And like 90% of the answers I get, oh, like we used to do it in my old gig like that and it works, so why shouldn't it work like that? So like people don't even think about, because there is experience, they don't even think about the applicability of the current assumptions or methodology. They just take it what they know and say like, I'm an experienced person, this is how it's done. So is the answer to that not hire experienced people to bring new perspectives? How to break these constraints?
No, I love that. I love that question. So my gut feel. So what you're pointing out first of all is really important to me. That we need to always be looking at the assumptions we hold that's constraining what we do. So absolutely agree with that. My gut feeling though is that experience, all experience does is maybe change the gives us a different set of assumptions perhaps, but we still naturally will hold assumptions. So I've failed time and time as a manager. And I had no experience, right? I walked into management with no experience. So why did I fail so much? Surely that should help me see the assumptions I hold, but it didn't. Because a lot of the rules that I was using as a manager were coming from people I saw practicing, and a lot that I just made up as I went along. So my gut feeling is that if it was to do with experience, I would have been a much better manager than I really was. And So I think it's less to do with experience and more about kind of almost a scientific approach, having something that can help us start to surface the assumptions. And Akov in his book says, you can't just magically see your assumptions. You can't just magically see the constraints you have in your head. If we could, it would be much easier. But I think just having a scientific approach where we can start to question our assumptions, surface and question our assumptions, like scientists. And the reason I say scientists is, if two scientists disagree, they don't just say, well, let's just average the results and we're done, right? They say, well, under what conditions were you measuring that thing, and what conditions was I measuring it? Were you doing it at room temperature? What altitude? And we're using centimeters or inches. And eventually they find the assumption that they were differed on, and then they realize actually the answer is the same. It's just one of the assumptions was incorrect. So if we can take that into business, that would be amazing. So I think your point is absolutely spot on. I'm unsure whether it's to do with experience, but nonetheless, the thrust of your argument I completely agree with.